rest of this vocab insane video that he just put out.
Moses' son, prior to him being circumcised by his wife, you think he was actually...
Wait a minute. Wait a goddamn minute. He did not answer what...
That's not answering what he's asking you a question.
So wait a minute. The scriptures say, he that is hasty to anger is full of folly and swine.
So what I'm asking your dumb is, what you still don't get, with that silly hat on.
Bring it back. That's not happening.
Like, when the last time refuses to answer scripture? I asked you, and this all stems from you not answering my question.
This dude is saying,
he that is hasty to anger is full of folly and swine.
How can we brought back to something that we're not a part of? Reconcile us to both. Jews and Gentiles were never together. No, that's what I'm saying.
They were never together, so it can't be talking about actual Gentiles.
Oh, he just cut himself.
Jews and Gentiles were never together, so how were they reconciled?
Right. Of course, those Gentiles you're referring to are Israelites that have been amalgamated into a Gentile state of mind.
What does it mean I'm not answering with scripture? What does that mean?
If actually it's a renewed man or a reconstituted man, this is something different.
That's a stupid question, vocab. And your dumb ass with that Kango on your head knows that. Oh!
I mean, hey, I guess.
I mean, is that okay? So give me God, man, this is just
the editing skills are good, but it's just stupid.
Honestly, the editing skills are not good.
You don't think so?
This is not even.
I couldn't do that.
He is just doing stuff just because he's over there playing with his video program. That's all this doing. He's a loser.
It seems like
wait, I don't get the answer.
Nope. Of course not. He's the devil. He's got an ad coming in. To be continued, and then here comes an ad. And then what does vocab do? I got you, meaning I'm going to a scripture. Now you're asking me a new question.
Prior to being circumcised? That's
You're now asking me as I'm going to a verse, telling you I got you, going to a verse to explain what I'm saying. You now ask me a new question, but then with the theatrics on the video, doesn't answer with scripture. How about I was going to answer you with scripture, but you didn't give me an opportunity because you asked me a new question. Vocab Malone killed Tupac. Vocab Malone shot Ghost. There's no other explanation. He was at Circus that night. He killed Pac. He was at Truth that night. He killed Ghost. God. That's all I can say about the devil.
Doesn't the Bible say that the old covenant is, it depends how you interpret this word, but either fading away or obsolete?
No, it says that
abolished?
it's ready to vanish away.
Ready to vanish away?
Ready to vanish. Yes, Hebrews 8:13. And that he said, a new covenant he hath made the first old. Now that which decayed. And real quick, when do you believe the new covenant started?
Oh, this is the blood of the new covenant that I pour out for you.
So when Christ died on the cross? Yeah. Perfect. I'm very glad you said that.
Yeah,
and that he said, a new covenant he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. So we don't know who, we can disagree on who wrote Hebrews. It doesn't really matter. But whoever the author is said that the old covenant is ready to vanish away. Not that it has vanished away. And we can both agree that the book of Hebrews was written post Christ's death, right?
Yeah, speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete at 8:13. But what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away.
Right, ready. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
ready to vanish away.
But it says the first one's obsolete.
No, it says it's old and it decayeth and it's ready to vanish away. Like vocab, right now, what time is it? Let's say it's like 7 o'clock,
right.
And you said, all right, Hassan, I'm ready to wrap up. Have we wrapped up or are we about to wrap up? We're ready to wrap up.
So you think where it says the first one obsolete means that...
No, it's waxing old and it's ready to vanish away. Like we're almost there. Again, another example. If school gets out at 3 o'clock and we're in school at 2:55 and I say, man, vocab, I'm ready to go home. Am I home or am I waiting in school to go home?
So, but
Can you answer that real quick?
yeah, that's an example. I know what you're saying.
Okay.
For your example, of course, your answer would follow the example.
Okay.
But in this, verse 13, in speaking of a new covenant, so the new covenant is being spoken of. It's saying by speaking of it, you make the old one the first one obsolete.
Where do we see that at?
That's Hebrews 8:13.
Right, which we just read. In that he saith, he's saying, a new covenant he hath made the first old. The first covenant is old.
Yeah, so did Jesus speak of a new covenant?
Hold on. Yes, he did. But now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready. Why would it say ready to vanish away?
Yeah, well, look, it's already obsolete, right?
Can you, I know, but can you explain that though?
Yeah. Here's what it is. Hebrews is written at a time where the temple still stood. And the reason we know that is because part of the temptation that the author is trying to get them to avoid is to go back to temple sacrifice.
Okay.
He's saying, why would you go back to that? So the temple sacrifice is still occurring when Hebrews is written, which is, by the way, a good apologetic, I think, for an earlier date of Hebrews, right? Because a lot of liberal leftist scholars like to late date it like they do a lot of the New Testament.
Okay.
So here we have a situation where that's still happening, right? But not all Jews realize that. They're still trying to do this. But
Should they not do
God
that?
God has already made it clear that with the work of Messiah begins a new covenant. That's why he says things like the kingdom of God is at hand, or the kingdom of God is here among you. Those kinds of phrases don't make sense if you don't have a new covenant attendant to it. Because just like it doesn't make sense to have new scriptures unless you have a new covenant. Just like God gave the Israelites this law at Sinai, right? And they have attendant scriptures to it.
Right.
They either point to it or point back to it, like the prophetic work, right? Similar with the new covenant. It doesn't make sense unless you have a new covenant. Then why do you have these new scriptures? You see what I'm saying? They go along with it. And that's what it's saying. The first one is obsolete. I mean,
what does it mean? It says ready to wax away. Well, number one, and number two.
Basically, I think one way to understand is what I was saying about the temple. Maybe I didn't finish my thought on that. My bad. Which is the idea that the temple is about to get destroyed, just like Jesus predicted on the dot. It's going to happen within this generation.
Right.
That's done, and that's kind of the ultimate symbol of it being gone. But it's gone. It's vanished away.
Who do you? It doesn't even matter who you think wrote Hebrews.
I don't know for sure. Just like
right. Some scholars say Paul, some Barnabas. It's not.
Yeah, like
right
could have been Apollos, for example.
Right.
Could have been Luke, being an amentuous for Paul.
Right.
I think that's possible. I've heard people say Barnabas. I think those are all good interpretations.
But
really, God only knows.
Okay, that's fine, and I agree. But not only do you say ready to vanish away, in your response just now, you mentioned how whoever the author is trying to stray people away from temple sacrifice.
Yeah, he's trying not to get them to go back.
But Paul himself, per the order of James, went and sacrificed at the temple. So how can that make sense?
Paul's not. Whatever Paul is doing, he doesn't think that this is atoning for his sins, right?
I know, but that's not. I didn't say atone for sins. I said temple sacrifice.
What are you saying? You think Paul did that would contradict this?
No, not this. What you just said. You said the author of this is trying to get people away from temple sacrifice.
The whole system, though. It's not just that. It's a whole system, and thinking that is atoning. For example, he talks about this is a perfect example of what we're talking about in Hebrews, right? It's like the priests on the Day of Atonement would have to go in first, and you know this, but have to first make a sacrifice for their own sin because they're sinners, right? And then there was no chairs in the Holy of Holies because their work was never finished, right? These are all things you know, right? But with Christ, when his work is done, he ascends and he sits in a manner of speaking at the right hand of the Father, showing his work is done, and that's why he's once forever for all. So that's new covenant. Paul's literally saying the priestly system is done away with. And then he makes the argument, if one thing is done, or did I say Paul? The author of Hebrews, whatever I said there, makes the argument that if one thing is done, and clearly this could be changed.
Right.
That's all right there. So Hebrews, we got to take it as a whole, and we see that, the first one's obsolete. I mean, what do you think that means, the first one's obsolete?
Okay, first I want to address what you just said, right?
Sure.
About how there won't, are you essentially saying there won't be any more temple sacrifice?
No, we have one once for all. Why would we kill
a
bunch of bulls and goats and oxen, which can't even pay for our sins anyway?
Well,
Why would we ever do that again?
Okay, well, here's what I'll say, right? I want to first read the scripture, then I want to go back to the gospel. Because I feel like we kind of strayed away from that, which is fine because it happens throughout dialogue. But Ezekiel 44 and 15, it says, "But the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, that kept the charge of my sanctuary, when the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall come near to me to minister unto me, and they shall stand before me to offer unto me the fat and the blood, saith the Lord God. They shall enter my sanctuary, and they shall come near to my table to minister unto me, and they shall keep my charge." This is what we see in the book of Ezekiel. They shall do this.
Yeah. So is Christ sitting down, though?
I'm saying, can you explain what that means? What does that mean right there?
Well, that's what they're supposed to do in the Old Covenant.
So why do we see this happening again in Christ's kingdom?
Wait, you're saying we see this same kind of activity in
Absolutely.
the New Covenant?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because let me further substantiate.
Well, okay, you can turn there totally. I guess I'm trying to understand what you think that would demonstrate. Just so you know, there are Christians watching this, whoever sees it, right? They would say that's right. There are Christians who think there's going to be a third temple built, and there's going to be a whole sacrificial system reinstituted again.
Well, what's the purpose of it, is what you're asking me?
Yeah, like what I'm saying is there's Christians who think that.
Right.
So I understand that what I'm saying doesn't represent all Christians, just like what you say doesn't represent all Israelites. But certainly that's a trend. I do think it's the right interpretation, right? But if somehow I got to heaven and it was like, and God was like, hey, I want a memorial for what Christ did, and this is how I'm going to do it, and actually, Vocab, you were wrong. We're going to be doing these forever. I'm like, oh, okay, I misunderstood that. But I don't see how that would. What would that really mean? You see what I'm saying?
And my answer would go right back to the New Covenant, because the New Covenant, as we see outlined in Jeremiah 31 and Hebrews 8, is for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And that the New Covenant is the law getting put in their inward parts. That's something I want to address the New Covenant as well before we go to the gospel. And so the reason why there will be these sacrifices in the kingdom is because there will still be sinners of the other nations, not of the Israelites. So their sins will be atoned for through animal sacrifice, because their sins were not atoned for through the blood of Christ, because it was not applicable to them.
Hold on, some of this is new to me, as far as Hebrews' understanding of the afterlife. Can you say that again one more time? Like some of you're saying is new. You're saying there's going to be temple sacrifices for the other nations, not Israelites.
Yes.
For all eternity.
Yes.
Okay, but I thought other nations can't sin because the law wasn't given.
I never said that. We don't believe other nations can't sin. There are certain universal sins, like, for example, hold on.
So you disagree with the other camps on that?
Yes, we do.
So this is new to me.
I understand, that's fine. Yeah. We haven't had this conversation with us. So there's a scripture, as a matter of fact, let me just get it, because for edification's sake. Deuteronomy 14:21. It says, ye shall not eat of anything that dieth of itself. The children of Israel can't eat an animal that dies of itself. Thou shalt give it unto the stranger that is in thy gates, and he can eat it. So it would be a sin for Israelites to eat of it, but the other nation, they're allowed to eat of it, right? It won't be a sin unto them. So there are universal laws like adultery, fornication. These are principles that the other nations can't keep. That's why when Abraham went into Egypt, and Abimelech, I believe, when he went to where Abimelech was.
God kept him from doing it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we agree.
Right.
Just so you know, that example you gave and others like it are what we give as an example to show that there's components or aspects of the Mosaic law, which attend specifically to theocratic national Israel during the Old Covenant.
Right.
And so those are things you need to keep, but they're not permanent, eternal, temporal, because they don't relate to some kind of permanent, temporal, permanent, eternal thing. The way that in Genesis 9, it even says, hey, just like you can eat everything now in the Noahic covenant, you still can't kill nobody, because God makes all men in the image of God, and therefore it's wrong to kill them. So if you shed blood, your blood will be shed. Okay. So we agree with that. Right. And I think that's a perfect demonstration that there's components, what we call maybe related to civic or in a sense religious duty, those aspects of the law, those are what's obsolete. Those are things that came essentially at Sinai or sometime during the Old Covenant. Because fringes, for example, was later. It wasn't even at Sinai. So this shows a progressive covenantalism even further. This is not something that's like had to always be. This is something that has to be now because you did this. So if you go at prior, it's different. But we're under the new covenant, right? We're under a different set of circumstances.
Okay. Well, I mean, we would have to have a totally separate dialogue for that, because I think the way it's going right now, we're going to be going back and forth, and I want to touch upon the gospel. Which is fine. I'm more than willing to have that dialogue, but I definitely want to focus on the gospel, because that's what we both agreed to talk about.
So you believe that all components of the Old Covenant must last forever into all eternity?
What do you mean all components of the Old Covenant?
Everything that was given in the Old Covenant in any way must last for all eternity.
When you say must last for all eternity, you mean just perpetually is going to last?
Yeah, can never be changed or altered in any way, all the way into the end of time, which there's no really end of time.
Well, there's certain laws in the Old Testament that speak about when the children of Israel sin, here's what we need to do, right? Now, in the New Covenant, they won't sin because the law will be placed in the inward part. So in the New Covenant, those things won't be applicable. So that answers your question.
So that means it sounds like if I put all together what you're saying, Assad, it sounds like what you're saying is you're gonna have a situation where I'm putting it together. I'm trying to get this right how you said it. where in when I say afterlife, I just mean like when the kingdom has come fully realized.
Okay, because that's important.
That's what I mean by
okay,
that.
okay.
I just mean after we're dead, and then when the Lord comes back, what happens next? You're saying in that situation, you call it the eschaton, you call it the final age, if that's better, right? During that time, there's going to be Israelites or ethnic Israelites who are now perfected and glorified and will no longer sin, but there's going to be Gentiles around them in certain servant capacities who are going to be continuing to sin?
Yes.
Okay, so could you have a situation like where you had Joseph and Potiphar's wife, where let's say Hassad has his slave of another nation, right? And he, the slave of the nation, when you're gone, rapes your wife.
That would
well, so the sin of rape will be gone, and
because
or only sins against Israelite can't happen.
Well, here's why: because the scripture said peace will be within your walls and in your gates. So obviously that wouldn't be peace.
So can you have sin where there's peace?
Can you have sin when there's peace? Yes, but not amongst our people. That's why I said within your walls,
but
your gates.
Where do those Gentile slaves live?
Well, they can live outside. I'm sure there'll be sins in there.
You won't have any house
by
servants?
them.
You won't have any house servants?
That's what I'm saying, Vocab. The sin you just gave the example of with rape. That won't happen due to the fact there will be peace within our walls towards us. So there will also be. That's what I'm saying.
Moabite steal your silverware?
Hold on. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Peace is subject. What do you mean, like peace or
peace? We got to go with shalom, right?
Okay.
And when we see shalom, it's a concept of wholeness. It's a perfected state of things. It's not just the absence of war. And in Romans, we see a situation where the scriptures say that if your sins have been paid for, justified, you have peace with God, right? And war's not going to break out at any moment. And so you're saying that you're going to have a state of shalom. We agree about that being the state of the final age. But I'm trying to put together what seem to be two contradictory things. You're saying you'll have Gentile servants, but they can still sin. So why can't a Moabite steal your silverware?
Well, that's why when I say peace and we say shalom, wholeness and things of that nature, I say that would be in reference to war or serious harm coming towards you.
Brother, that's not a complete understanding of shalom.
How is that not a complete understanding of shalom?
That's not a Semitic or biblical concept.
Okay. Real quick. I want to. This goes right back to. I want to go right back to what we were talking about.
Shouldn't it be upon Israel to punish these Gentile sinners?
That's perfect.
So you would kill them.
Hold on. Wait.
If they break a Mosaic law that requires death, you would kill them, right?
Right.
So there's peace in that situation?
There's still peace. Yes, that's peace.
So killing someone with a sword, in your understanding, equals peace. Someone stealing your silverware equals peace. So if I walked into your crib right now, it's like, man, I really like the spoon, put it in my pocket, I go, you think that's peace?
Yes, that's still peace. That's still, and here's perfect, right? That ties right back into what we're talking about.
So if that's the case, we have peace right now.
Hold on. No, I'll address that too. Isaiah 60, right, verse 10. And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on it. So there will be mercy given to the children of Israel, right? Peace, essentially. Verse 11. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles. So they're going to be strangers. The strangers are going to be building up our walls. That's not going to be a state of peace for them. It'll be a state of peace for us, though. That's why I said it's subjective, pursuant upon who is receiving the peace.
Right. So those strangers there are actually Israelite foreigners.
These strangers are Israelite foreigners.
I'm playing your game.
Okay.
But you see,
that's why context is so important.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if we're going to do the thing where earlier, if we're going to do that, then
that's why context is. That's why it's talking about rightly dividing the word.
Maybe these are 2/3.
Okay, well, let's see.
Maybe have other Israelite. But
let's keep going. It says that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. Yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. So here we see.
So those Gentiles are uncircumcised Israelites, right?
Hold on. I understand the game that you're trying to play.
I'll stop.
No, I understand.
We're having a good dialogue. I'll stop. But I do think it's a good point. I'll stop.
No, I understand why you're saying the way it is, but that's why we go into the context of everything, right? I understand that there may be certain Israelites that you do interact with that butcher the context of, and you may say that we do that too. That's fine. But we do agree that context is important. So a Gentile in context can be referred to as an Israelite. Is it every time?
Don't agree on that.
Okay, that's fine. We don't agree.
You're saying that's part of contextual reading, but by that understanding, we could say something like, in certain contexts, sheep actually means giraffe. Like
you have to then demonstrate that. You have to be able to.
That's why I was asking you earlier about where's this example you saw, and I don't think we saw one. But I understand, because really it's essential But you would say, well, this is this is a Christian reading or whatever you want to call it, seminary school, whatever you want to call it. But the thing is, you got to recognize within Hebrew Israelism, your one West position is the minority position.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that makes it false. What I'm just saying is that other Hebrew Israelites would say, well, I don't rock with vocab, but he's actually right about that. And I mean, you know the examples I could give, GOCC, Israel of God. Coincidentally, when you add them together, are kind of larger, than really the rest of the movement. So it seems like this is not a Gentile, reading or thing. This is something that other people have been like, oh, okay. Now, I don't agree with Israel of God. They still have some kind of servitude, situation. It's more mild. But I don't see, seriously, man, I don't see how you say somebody can do some dirt as your household servant and you kill them or whatever happens, and then that's peace.
Because
that doesn't sound like heaven.
Because we won't be in a position where we're in servitude to another nation. Regardless if they steal something from me, I have the power to judge them. That's why it's peace.
Do you think you'll always know if they do something wrong?
I mean, I don't, probably. I'll find out, I'm sure.
But you find out everything wrong that everyone's done to you wrong in this life or so?
No, I'm not in a glorified body right now.
So do you think you have increased kind of mental awareness to where you'll know that?
Okay.
Hey, Halazar's calling.
This is
hey.
Good. What's going on?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
You get this on there.
Yeah. So I'm here with Vocab Malone.
Okay.
Yeah, he can hear you right now, by the way.
Hey, what's up, man?
Okay, what's going on, okay? How you feeling?
Having a pretty good dialogue with Assad and Nakawam.
Okay, you enjoying the city of brotherly love, huh?
I am. I went to Geno's and Pat's, but
Let
Geno's
brotherly
is
love
super
get
lame.
to you.
Yeah, go to Pat's, but I got to try Max's next.
Yes, sir. Okay, so y'all had a good dialogue, though?
I think so. It'll be interesting to see.
All praise to the Most High, man.
It could be another respectful debate, but I'm not sure you would title it that way. We'll see. Not a good dialogue, though, man.
Okay. Another respectful debate. Did you live stream?
Not unless Nakawam did. I'm not live streaming, actually.
Okay.
I don't have
All right. That's good.
capacity
I'll take a look at the footage.
this time around.
Now, one of the things that we mentioned is the gospel, and part of it, the Gentiles kind of got mentioned. Real quick, Vocab, I want to just show you something because you asked me a question just now concerning you don't see any precedents of Israelites being referred to as Gentiles in scriptures, right? So I just wanted to show you one, and then we can move back to the gospel. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1. It says, moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea. So who would you say passed through the Red Sea with Moses?
The mixed multitude that left Egypt under the Exodus.
Okay, cool. So I'll address that first, and then we can continue on in reading. This is Numbers chapter 11, verse 4. It says, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? So the mixed multitude fell a-lusting, right? Verse 33. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague, and he called the name of that place Kibroth Hata'avah, because there they buried the people that lusted. So right there, reading it in context, it said the mixed multitude perished in the very same chapter, right? So I just wanted that to be for the record.
Oh, you're saying you think all the foreigners among them are dead?
I said the mixed multitude is what it said died. All of them right there.
So,
we don't believe the mixed multitude made it into the promised land. We know they came out, but we don't believe they made it into the promised land.
That could be very well. I mean, some of them might have had kids, but that could be very well true. Except, of course, Caleb. Caleb himself was a Kenizzite.
The good old Kenizzite.
Yeah, contemporaries of Abraham. Those people were.
Yeah, I wouldn't say because of now that's a rabbit hole. But boy, without even getting into that, we know that Caleb is of course reckoned as from the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, later on he certainly is. You got to go somewhere, right?
Exactly. So that's why I wouldn't say that he was a part of the mixed multitude because he's reckoned under Judah. The mixed multitude was always kind of okay. This is the mixed multitude. We don't see the mixed multitude as a collective being reckoned among Israel. They're always kind of being referred to as the mixed multitude.
So I'm going to continue in reading. So the people who he's addressing.
Sorry, is this something specific you called me for? You just want me to hear this?
No, I want you to hear this, right? 1 Corinthians 12, 1 and 2. It says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I will not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. So in verse 10, it identifies the people as the people that went through the Red Sea. And then two chapters later, it identifies the same people as being Gentiles. Well, that would be calling Israelites Gentiles, because we just demonstrated that the mixed multitude died in Numbers, the 11th chapter.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
If you're in Christ, you have the offspring of Abraham.
Hold on. But wait a minute. How are you now, because you're in Christ, being able to steal another people's ancestry?
Wow, that's a messed up way to describe biblical adoption.
Well, no, Vocab. How are these people now? If I'm an Israelite, right, Vocab? Let's say I am. My ancestors walked through the Red Sea with Moses, right? Correct?
Oh, well,
Assuming I'm an Israelite.
I mean, maybe some of them. I mean, you have to be 100% Israelite to say all your ancestors.
Let's get a little more practical. Right? Let's say vocab, when you were young, you got adopted into a black family, right? Now, we know that black family, the American black family, 9 times out of 10, their ancestors were victims of the Middle Passage transatlantic slave trade, right? Now, because you're adopted in that family, I'm not saying you're not a part of that family, but is that your history, though? Is that your ethnic history?
Ethnic history, that's an interesting term, but I mean, we see Ruth say, your people will be my people. Your God will be my God, you know?
No, I'm not disputing that. We're not disputing that. It's just that here in this, let's say they're adopted in and they're considered Israel at point of belief and acceptation of Christ in Abraham, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't give them this history. It gives them acceptance into Israel, into the Commonwealth of Israel. But that doesn't give them this ethnic, that's why I said the ethnic history. Their ancestors, they don't descend from the people who went through this thing. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, it doesn't literally make it true. But I mean, I'm just dealing with passages like Galatians 3:29. If you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's offspring. You know what I mean? So like, I'm just going along with that reading. I'm not saying it literally makes that happen, because this adoption is of a different kind. And that's why John 1 says, not according to the flesh, right? Those who he gave the right to become the sons of God, those who believed. And just like being born again is not literal either. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that's why that's described that way. Because nobody that I've ever read or ever heard who knows anything about the letters to the Corinthians has ever said that it's written to only Jews. Now, there are places where some New Testament scholars postulate that among other letters. For example, some people postulate that, for example, among 1 Peter. That's an example of one. So it's not impossible that someone who's familiar with this could postulate that, right? What I'm saying is, when you talk about Corinth, when you talk about the issues that he's describing there, we talk about the background of the church, we talk about the language of the letter, we see, this is clearly a mixed congregation. And everything we know about it goes along with that as well. You know what I'm saying? When we see, for example, Clement's letter from Rome later on, written to those Corinthians, we see even further. So, yeah, I'm not saying that it all of a sudden means they literally become that, but see, that's why circumcision of the heart is an important concept. The fact is, the New Testament interpretation of Old Testament prophecies and promises is not always exactly what Second Temple Jews thought it would be. And I think your guys' interpretation sometimes is a little bit more in line with what some, not all, Second Temple Jews thought, but not the way the New Testament actually deals with the text. Because you could tell there's surprising ways the New Testament authors deal with the Old Testament text when they quote spiritualize it. Perfect example, when you see some of the prophecies of Christ, where out of Israel I have called my son. What? That actually meant Israel back in Hosea. And yet you have Matthew saying Christ fulfills that. You see fascinating things like that. So that's what I'm saying, because I'm just reading Galatians 3, and that's not the only place. You see a place where Peter refers to all the women of the church as daughters of Sarah, right? It says, you got, well, that means all believers. Yeah. So you see there, you have Abraham and Sarah, both people being described as sort of fathers and mothers of all the faithful. That's why I don't go along with the interpretation of like this lineage thing, especially when we see what Ruth said. But I understand what you're saying, but I'm not really saying that that's what actually happened. But I'm saying when it says your forefathers, that's what's happening. It is a spiritual adoption. Otherwise, what do you do with Galatians 3:29, for example, you know?
So would you say it's the same exact thing, for example, in Romans 9 and 10 when it says, and not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by our father Isaac? Are you essentially saying that Isaac is now their spiritual ancestor?
That's an interesting one in Romans. That might be, I'd have to look at that. That's a good question. That might be different. Here's why.
Okay.
Because remember the beginning of it where he says, my kinsman according to the flesh.
He's to Israel,
It
right?
does have to control certain components within that Romans 9 through 11.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I think all Israel will be saved does mean elect Israelites will be saved.
Okay.
So that one might be an example. I don't know how to look at it. That's a good question.
Okay, because in the same book of Romans, he calls these people Gentiles. But then according to your own admission just now, it's a possibility that they could be Israelites.
Wait. No, because he's still differentiating.
What do you mean? No, I'm saying though, in Romans 9, you said that it's a possibility that he could be referring to Israelites, talking to them, right?
Yeah,
so
in Romans 9, when the specific question you
right,
asked,
so this addresses your previous question when you mentioned about, I don't see Israelites being called Gentiles, but in the same book of Romans you just talked about, it says that these who you say could be Israelites are called Gentiles.
Yeah,
right?
but he's not doing that.
Oh, no, I'm about to show you.
Because he literally says, even us. So who would the us be there? Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
Even us whom he has called, not from the Jews only. So that's actually a negation, right? Not only from this group, but also from this group. So that negation is saying not only from this group, but also from the Gentiles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we have places where that controls the way we should see this.
Okay.
But there's other places besides Romans 9:24.
Okay, well, let's keep going in Romans 9:24. Even us whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. And then Paul quotes a prophecy to the Gentiles, and let's see what the prophecy is.
Yeah.
As he has said also in Hosea, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved.
Yeah.
Who is that prophecy in reference to?
Those were not a people prior, Gentiles.
I was talking to Gentiles.
What shall we say then? The Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have attained it. That is the righteousness that is by faith. But that Israel, who pursued the law that would lead to righteousness, did not succeed in reaching that law.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so Romans 9:30 is further clarification.
So when Hosea says, I will call them my people, which are not my people, that's referring to who?
That's referring to Gentiles.
Non-Israelites is what you're saying.
Yeah. Now,
okay. So can I read?
The reason we know that is because the New Covenant interpretation.
Okay. So
I don't think most people reading Hosea prior to the New Covenant would have said that. It's a New Covenant interpretation that controls that.
So
because
Paul,
if you're just looking at Hosea, you might say these are just the sort of divorced Israelites from Yahweh. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna make them like they're not his people.
So because Paul interprets it this way, according to your understanding, that is now the final.
Acts 15 does the same thing.
Okay, so wait a minute. Let's just read Hosea 1 and 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, who is the them?
Those are Israelites in that passage.
Okay, ye are not my people. There it shall be said unto them, who's the them?
Yeah, those are Israelites. That's
okay,
what I said.
Ye are the sons of the living God. So when we read the prophecy, what he's quoting is clearly referring to the children of Israel. So how can you then say Paul is taking this and applying it to non-Israelites when it's clearly Israelites by your own admission?
Yeah, that's what I said. We have to understand the spiritual adoption. That's a real thing. And we have to understand the way the New Covenant controls the narrative. We don't want to let what we thought God was going to do determine what God is going to do.
But it's clear according to what you... Just make sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, no, all we got to do is read Romans. All we got to do is read... And Acts 15. You know the Acts 15.
With the thought. The word that came from God, right, came to Hosea. Hosea heard this directly from God, right? Even through medium or whatever. He got the word of God and inscribed the word of God directly, right? So this is what's problematic now. We're saying now that emphatically what, again, you understand Paul is saying there supersedes the direct word of God that comes to the prophet Hosea.
No.
Well, that's what I'm getting. So how is that not what that is? Because it says to Israel, it's very clear contextually it identifies Israel, Judah, not a people, my people, etc. In that place, you're going to be told you're not this, you're not that, whatever. That's what it says directly in Hosea. Then now we go to Romans 9, and he's saying that really what this means is you people who were never Israelites, it makes you Israelites, but the prophet heard directly from God, this is to Israel and Judah.
Yeah, so it's not just Paul, but I would disagree with the contention where you say that we have Hosea hearing directly from Yahweh, but we don't have the Apostle Paul hearing directly from Yahweh. So I disagree with that contention. And then they got to comport together. But the thing is that Acts 15 comports, and this is James in the Jerusalem Council speaking, with what is being said in Romans. After they finished speaking, James replied, brothers, listen to me. Simeon has related how God first visited the Gentiles to take them from them a people for his name. And then you look down at verse 17, it says, all the Gentiles who are called by my name. I mean, this is the New Testament witness. This is not pitting the old versus the new. This is making sure our understanding aligns with what the new covenant says. Because otherwise, we might as well just do away with the new covenant. If we're going to act as if it has no interpretive weight in how we look at the Old Testament, then why do we even go here? Why is this here if it doesn't have a determinative factor in precision? Because it's written post the events, not prior to the events. There's a level of clarity, and it goes all the way to Revelation. One last thing. Remember when you said they'll be like the sand of the sea and all that? That's fulfilled in Revelation. You have Revelation 5:11. Then I looked, heard around the throne the living creatures and the elders the voice of many angels.
You got that preacher? The one I did?
Yeah. I'm there.
Okay. Yeah, just had that right.
I know.
Go ahead. So I want to make sure Vocab finishes this point.
Go ahead.
What was he saying?
He was just making sure that we were on the same page.
I was making sure you had something.
Yeah.
For which one?
No, he's listening to you, but he's no. He's wanting to let you finish. He's just making sure him and I are on the same page.
Oh, right.
Okay.
I was just saying that the myriad of people is seen in two places, which is Revelation 5 and Revelation 7. Because you see, Revelation 7:9 says, after this I looked, behold, a great multitude that no one could number. So that's the ultimate fulfillment of that Isaiah passage that you read. Or I'm sorry, Hosea passage, excuse me. And then right to that it says, from all tribes and peoples and languages. And we can go back there and see further definition. And that shows us how there's an equivalency between the groups mentioned in 5 through 8 and in the groups mentioned in 9 through 10. And so this shows you there is indeed a spiritual Israel. I mean, you guys aren't part of national, Israel. There's some level in which I think you actually agree with that concept. Even though I know that concept is kind of bemoaned. But there must be some way in which you agree with it. Because you'll say Israel, but you're not saying you're part of a national Israel. So there's some way, and it seems like which you recognize that. Unless you're just saying sort of our blood unites us and that's it. But then the question is, what about those who are not under the Messiah? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would contend that physical Israel is spiritual Israel. Because I would say that those who the Spirit would bear witness to be Israel, that would have the spiritual characteristics of Israel, would also be the offspring of the man, Israel, or Jacob. But
what do you mean by spiritual?
Yeah, Isaiah 63. And I have some.
Meaning, so like, stop right there before I do. You said what you mean by spiritual?
Spiritual characteristics of Israel. What do you mean by that?
Romans 8:16 says, the Spirit bear witness with our spirit that we are the children of the living God. So, for example, when we take a look at prophetically what would befall Israel and the spiritual characteristics that Israel would demonstrate, that they always demonstrate, i.e. being stiff-hearted, etc., stiff-necked, etc., I would say that the Israelites are going to bear witness to that. They're going to be all of those things. They're going to be fulfillment of prophecy. We're going to be able to observe those things. So there's a spiritual, it's not just a physical aspect, there's a spiritual aspect to identify Israel. My fault. We got the brother that's out here that played the trumpet, man. He's moving in.
All right. Want me to just...
Hey, real quick.
I got it.
I'm going to be in San Diego maybe sometime this month.
Okay.
Anybody I should chop it up with San Diego if our Saturday becomes available. Say what?
Yeah, Deacon, our camp is out there at Horton Plaza at the mall downtown, Horton Plaza Park. Deacon will be down there.
What time do they go out?
And about 4. No, 2. They go out about 2 o'clock, 2 in the afternoon.
Where'd you say it was?
Horton Plaza.
Horton Plaza?
Horton Plaza Park. Horton Plaza Park is right, like it's the mall downtown, but there's a huge park that's connected to the mall. They're like on the side of the park.
All right, I don't know. I'm not sure, but okay.
If you're down there, you'll be able to find it. Horton Plaza Park. If you type that in, I think the address is 900. It's either 904th Street. 904th Street. It'll take you right there.
All right, I'll see what's up. Okay, thank you, man.
All praise.
All right,
shalom.
Okay, so here's what, because you mentioned called by my name, right? Isaiah 63:19. We are thine, speaking to Israel. Thou never bearest rule over them. They were not called by thy name. It says they were not called by thy name.
Yeah.
The other nations were not called by the Most High God's name. So
Yeah, that's right.
So now I want to read you something just because I want to get another witness to prove that Hosea 1:10 is in reference to the children of Israel, which is the Apostle Peter. And you just mentioned prior that there are certain Christians of the school that thought that Peter's epistles were written to the Jews.
Yeah, directly to them. That doesn't mean it doesn't apply
Okay.
to the whole of the church, but I'm saying there's some people who do say that.
Okay, perfect.
Which could make sense as the apostle to the Jews.
No, exactly, I was going to mention in Galatians how Paul's
again,
apostle.
that's not an impossible interpretation. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So 1 Peter 2:9. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation,
Right.
a peculiar people. Would you say this is in reference to the Israelites?
It's well, so he can write to Israelite Christians, right? Because this does not apply to Israelites who are not Christians. And the reason
Okay.
why I bring the term Christian is Peter brings the term Christian.
That's
into it,
fine.
you know?
So it is.
So
But,
these are Israelite Christians,
Christians.
if that would be the interpretation, Israelites. So they still
Okay.
have to be Christians.
okay, but they are Israelites. But they're Christian Israelites.
The Christian thing is the thing that matters, though.
Okay, but are they Israelites?
If that's right about First Peter.
Okay,
you see what I'm
okay,
saying?
okay.
But that doesn't mean it wouldn't apply to other Christians of other ethnicities.
Okay, well,
you
let's
see
see.
what I'm saying?
And it says that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of his darkness unto his marvelous light. Now, when it says a chosen generation, a royal priesthood,
Yeah.
we read about in Exodus 19
Yeah.
how the children of Israel, they're a royal priesthood, a holy nation, Deuteronomy 7:6. These are all things applicable to the children of Israel. And when it talks about a peculiar, what does it say? A peculiar, not this one. It says
Probably
a
going to
peculiar
verse-
people.
probably would go into verse 10.
Peculiar people, Deuteronomy 14:2. You're a peculiar people. So this is clearly in reference to the children of Israel, right? Let's see. It says.
Well, no, the peculiar people are only God's elect. It's not all Israelites.
Well, I'm saying Deuteronomy 14:2 says Israel
You're talking
is the
about in
peculiar
Deuteronomy.
people.
Yeah, in Deuteronomy. Yeah.
Okay, well, I would contend that it's always going to be like that. So I want to keep
Well,
going.
I hear what you're saying, but that's the very difference between it.
I
Go
understand,
ahead.
but okay, I want to keep going. Which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. So according to your own understanding, we can disagree on whether the fact they have to be Christians, but we can agree on the fact that they are Israelites. You say Christians, I say it doesn't matter. So these Israelites are being referred to as the people that are talked about in Hosea 1:10
Yeah, so
by Peter and by
right. If
the
you're
prophet
not
Hosea.
right, but if you're not in good standing with Yahweh, you're not justified before His sight. You're not His people, and that's why all who are Israel are not Israel.
Okay.
So it's not a physical thing.
Well, we can discuss that too.
But do you think Israelites who during the old covenant, you know what I'm saying? Let's say there's a lady who becomes the wife of the Amalekite high priest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think she's in good standing with Yahweh and would be described as one who has a circumcised heart?
No,
Right.
She's an Israelite though, regardless.
Yeah,
there's nothing she can do to
ethnically-
change herself from being an Israelite, regardless of
Ethnically-
what she does.
Yeah, ethnically,
Mm-hmm.
she'd be an Israelite. But since when does that equal salvation?
Hold on. Well, the scripture said all Israel will be saved,
Well, the question is, what does that mean? Right?
and what means all Israel will be
Okay,
saved?
so if that's true,
Mhm.
this is where, in all honesty, it's sort of like dealing a little bit with Mormons. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean it's like I'm making an analogy.
Mm-hmm.
When I would deal with Mormons, they would draw these little circles.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be like terrestrial, celestial.
My grandmother's Mormon, so I'm
You know what I'm
somewhat
talking
familiar.
about? Yeah, the
Okay.
little chart they
Yes.
would draw out. Sometimes they would have you a photocopy.
Mm-hmm.
And they would basically be like, hey, if you do the temple ceremony and you're sealed properly, you could possibly go to exaltation, which is a state where Mormon men become deified,
Become God, basically.
become master of their own
Okay.
planet,
Right,
right?
right, right.
And populate populate physically, their own planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have that kind of situation being supposed to be a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have Mormons, under their misunderstanding, who are not temple sealed, maybe they didn't do X, Y, Z. They go to this next level, and then there's like the average Joe American or whatever is like on the lowest level, and only people like I used to jokingly say, ex-Mormons and Hitler are in the outer darkness.
Right.
Very few.
It's like a
people-
social class, essentially.
Yeah,
Sort of
yeah.
like what
So
Hindus believe. Somewhat similar.
Uh,
Into the what's it called?
Well, I would say, they have Nirvana at the end state, but I would say to them, so there's 3 levels of heaven under your understanding.
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to do right now to go to any heaven, to go
Right.
to a heaven? And they would say nothing.
So then, what's the point, right?
It's where it becomes essentially a useless thing because, and I know you guys don't like this, I don't usually prefer the term race, but just because of the rhyming aspect, I use it. You guys really do believe in salvation by race. Now you may say, no, it's salvation by grace, but you believe it's salvation by grace for only one race.
Right.
And again, I don't prefer the term race because I think it has problems, like it doesn't make a biological sense, but that is really what you believe.
Okay.
And that's why when you're out there speaking to whoever, if I really understood what you're saying, I'd be like, that's cool, but man, why do I gotta do all this? Now I know you gotta say, well, we should want to X, Y, Z, but it seems like a meaningless message ultimately, because really a person who you think is an Israelite, they don't really have to do anything. They'll get okay in the New Kingdom on your reading, no matter what wickedness they did. That means the craziest mass murderer who is an Israelite, who ever lived, is cool just by virtue of his ethnicity. Now, I guess you could say God could do that if he wanted, but then we don't serve a just God.
Right. And that's something, again, when we mentioned about the Hebrew Israelite misconceptions. Now, do we think that all Israelites will be saved? Yes, we do. However, is he in good standings? No, he's not. Here's why. They will taste of the second death. They will go through all the pain, trials, and tribulations prior to the second death. And in the kingdom, they will have not the same, not economic status as those who were in good standings.
Could they eventually attain that, though?
I'm not sure. I don't believe so, because their lot was wickedness. So they will still be Israelites, still be saved, but they won't be on the high standard.
So you have a heaven within a heaven, and then a hell within your heaven.
What do you mean?
Because you have
it's still heaven. It's still heaven for them, though.
You have top level Israelites who have all the attendant benefits of being an Israelite because they were faithful. Then you have lower level Israelites who they were wilding out. Let's say T-Pain. I don't know, some random example, right? Who is kind of over here and they're kind of stuck in this caste system permanently. Then you have a hell within a heaven because you have these Gentile slaves, right? And so you have heaven within heaven and hell within heaven. And you say you have peace.
Here's the second death is really the point. Okay, because
how do you define that?
Define what?
Like the second death for you, what's that mean?
The lake of fire.
Okay, so you would determine that as thermonuclear destruction of America?
Yes.
But not all 2/3 Jakes live in America, right?
No, the 2/3 is talking about America specifically.
What about 2/3 Jakes that are stuck in Freetown, Sierra Leone?
No, that's the 2/3 prophecy is dealing with America. Strictly.
Okay, so thermonuclear destruction that comes from the other nations that is equivalent to second death is only 2/3 Jakes in the United States of America.
Yes.
What about like Barbados, Bahamas, like those?
Those areas, due to the power that nuclear bombs was, they'll be followed that'll hit those regions, I believe.
So would that be the lake of fire as well?
Yeah.
So some Levites, under your reckoning, also experience the lake of fire?
Yes, they could, certainly.
Okay, so
I'll take a look into that as well. This
die.
Chiefly talking about the continental United States, how there could be some radiation or fallout that hits.
I understand what you're saying.
I'll take a look into that.
If you read these or hear these testimonials, these accounts of Japanese who were on Hiroshima or Nagasaki when Enola Gay dropped the bombs and all that, the United States during the end of World War II, they're like really horrible descriptions, but they're also really quick. People's flesh melts off them and they're dead. Now you have some survivors who experience things later. Do you think that, say, someone experiences a second death as you define it, they actually experience, will they have like radiation for a certain amount of time in the kingdom and then they'll die?
No.
Once they die, they're reincarnated and they would come back glorified, right?
I wouldn't say so, because dealing with the power that a nuclear bomb possessed back then and it does now is two totally different things. Like there's nuclear bombs that can wipe out certain states, from what I've heard.
Yeah, but you're gone like in an instant.
No, exactly.
It's
but
not
there's
really suffering.
Well, here's the thing. Prior to that, there will be suffering.
Okay.
There's going to be suffering leading up to the point of them.
Like what?
Like tribulation in terms of like famine, race riots, all hell breaking loose, and then
will you experience that as a non-2/3?
Potentially, but I'll be saved out of it. That's the point. If I'm of that number,
what will you be saved out of though?
The second death. That's the point.
Okay, so that means you're saying all the tribulation prior to the second death you experience as well.
Not to the same effect that they would, though.
Under your understanding, let's say you don't take the RFID chip, you might die of starvation, right? That could potentially happen to you, right?
No. My servant shall eat. That's what it says. So
you believe that all Hebrew Israelites who don't take what you see as the mark of the beast RFID chip, none of them will die?
No, okay. Are you speaking about those who are going to be saved, or just hypothetically any
Israelite?
Israelite?
Prior to the second death.
Any Israelite, or those who will be saved?
So, hold on. You're saying there could be 2/3 Israelites who wouldn't take the RFID chip, but they would die because they're 2/3, but they still don't take the mark? But
You don't have to.
1/3.
You don't have to take the RFID chip to be of the 2/3. You could still die and be of the 2/3 without taking the mark of the beast.
Right. I know what you're saying by that, but I'm saying it seems like you're going to experience the same trials and tribulation as these 2/3 prior to the second death.
No, not to the same level that they would, because even you read the book of Psalms where it says 10,000 shall fall by thy right side, but I will sustain thee. So they're going to be going through the absolute worst type of hell But the Lord, in Isaiah 65:13, my servants shall eat. They will be taken care of in that time.
All right.
And then they'll be saved out of it. But I want to touch upon...
And then you believe you'll be transported up, like almost like immediately prior to the second death? Like that's when you would be transported up?
Yes.
And
You'll be saved. Some people may... Now, here's the thing, right? There's scriptures speak about how some people get saved right before. So I couldn't say for me specifically. Is there a possibility that it'll be right before? Absolutely. But I couldn't say per individual
sometime
cases.
prior.
Okay.
It could be like a
It's
week
gonna be
before
prior.
or something?
I wouldn't say a week. I wouldn't know the exact time. I'd have to...
And then fly over to Israel and displace the Amalekites over there?
Well, we'll go to the wilderness first and then go over there. Pursuing Ezekiel, the 20th chapter.
In Israel?
The same type of wilderness that the Israelites entered in after the...
Like in Egypt?
Yes.
Or Saudi Arabia, that area, all those areas? So that's where you... How long would...
We'd be in that area before...
Yeah.
Prior, I couldn't say.
Would it be 40 years?
No, I wouldn't say 40 years. It doesn't give an outline to how long. It just says where we'll be going. That's Ezekiel 20, and I can just read that for... Because I don't want to just say things and not prove them. So Ezekiel 20:33. As I live, saith the Lord God, surely with a mighty hand, and with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out, will I rule over you. And I will bring you out from the people, and I will gather you out of the countries wherein you are scattered, with a mighty hand, and with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you face to face. And it goes on the same way that I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness. So that is post Israel being saved, and they'll go to the wilderness.
Okay. Do you just say all the camps except for GSCC hold of that?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But
I guess I'm just saying I'm following what you're saying. I think, and it seems like it's extremely minimal what a 2/3 has to experience, because you essentially have an ethnic universalism. Universalism is some kind of salvation for some kind of group of all, regardless of what they do. So you don't have true universalism in the sense of all people, but you do have an ethnic universalism. All people of this ethnicity, or whatever term you want to replace ethnicity with, all of them will be really ultimately saved. It may just be a little bit of a bumpier ride prior to that.
Well, I wouldn't say a little bit of bumpier. I would say a significantly bumpier ride. But I want to touch back on, because really when I talk about the gospel, I wanted to talk about who it is for, who it applies to, and what the state of the people that we believe that the gospel is not for, what it will be, right? So, for example, it's Micah 7:14. Feed thy people with thy rod, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitary in the wood, in the midst of Carmel, and let them feed in Bashan and Gilead as in the days of old. Going back to God bringing back his people. According to the days of thy coming out of the land of Egypt will I show unto him marvelous things. It's the same way how God showed marvelous ways for the Egyptians when he brought them out of Egypt. He'll do the same thing for his people again. Now,
here's show the marvelous things again.
Okay, right? So I want to get your exegesis on these next few verses. The nations shall see and be confounded at all their might. They shall lay their hand upon their mouth, their ears shall be deaf. They shall lick the dust like a serpent. They shall move out of their holes like worms of the earth. So this Bible right here is clearly saying that God's going to take care of his flock, his heritage, and the other nations are going to see it and lick the dust like a serpent. What does that mean to you?
Well, who is the shepherd?
Christ.
Right. So who are his sheep?
Israel.
Well, it's those who hear his voice.
Well, he said the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
So he says those who are my sheep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did all of Israel hear his voice?
Yes, all Israel will hear his voice.
So in John 6, when he says that just like there was haters in the wilderness during the days of Moses, when the manna came down, I'm the bread of life, here I am, you're going to have haters and disbelievers as well. You guys
well, just because you hear his voice doesn't mean that...
Doesn't he say that you're not my own, you're not mine? You won't be drawn, right?
Yeah, there's some people that won't be drawn to him.
He's talking to Israelites here, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so how are all Israelites under the Good Shepherd?
Hold on, that's what I'm saying. All Israelites, just because you hear something doesn't mean you're going to accept it, right? These are talking about those who are going to be saved amongst the children of Israel. This is what the point is.
So I think that's important. Also, continue with the fact of the shepherd king, who is prophesied in Micah, a number of places. That's one of the beautiful imagery, I think, given in the Old Testament for the Messiah. The shepherd king motif, of course, is fulfilled in Christ. Right. And he says in John 10:16, and I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there'll be one flock, one shepherd, which is very similar to language Paul is using in Ephesians 2. One new man, right? One nation. And so this is we see this continuous. And when we read John 6, which has similar motifs here as we see in John 10, where Jesus calls himself the Good Shepherd and says those are the ones who hear his voice, we see the continuity between the only ones who are raised up in the last day are those that the Father gives to the Son, right? That's the only group of people. And that's the only group who can come. So anyone outside of that, they will not come. John 6:37. All that the Father gives me will come to me. Whoever comes to me, I will never cast out. And here's the continuity that I don't think allows for this other unregenerate, unsaved, unrepentant group of people by sheer virtue of what they look like or their DNA to be in the kingdom. Verse 38, for I have come down from heaven not to do my will, the will of him who sent me. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose nothing of all that he has given me. Remember, the all is those who are drawn, which is only the Father, the ones that the Father gives the Son, but raise it up on the last day. So who will be raised up on the last day? The ones the Father gives. For this is the will of the Father, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes on him should have eternal life, and I will raise him on the last day. So if you don't look on the Son, believe and have eternal life, you will not be raised up on the last day.
I agree.
So these unrepentant Israelites, regardless of who they are or their identity, they will experience the lake of fire that's spoken of in Revelation, which is eternal conscious torment, not some nuclear devastation. And this is why I know sometimes you guys will say Christian church is soft and you guys are weak with that Jesus loves me hippie doctrine. We look at you, I'm just, in all due respect, and say the Hebrew Israelites are soft on this point because you don't want to have God and acting full wrathful vengeance like he describes in the book of Revelation. You turn it into something else that's temporary, like my skin falls off, then I come back a couple generations later as a reconstituted Israelite, and then I don't get all the privileges that Al-Azhar does or whatever, right? But we see a situation where like, no, it's got to be hard. It's got to be all the way. And that's why Paul says such radical stuff such as, I would cut myself off for you guys to be saved. That's how much I love you, because I know what's about to pop off. And John talks about it. The conscious, we have the smoke rising to heavens forever and ever. That's a big deal. We see what you guys have done. I'm just saying, in all honesty, that's first of all incredibly esoteric. No one has ever thought this. It seems extremely 20th century. It seems extremely, honestly, American, because it's only Jakes in America, as you would say. And it seems out of context. No one could have understood it until the atom bomb's invention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have the situation where it totally softens what God really does to his enemies, which is eternal conscious torment, wrath poured out continually, day and night. You know what I'm saying? So I hear you, but you got to understand, there's Christians who say we have good reasons not to believe what is being promoted here. You know what I mean? We feel like we have good biblical reasons.
Okay. I'm trying to find this scripture in the book of Psalms.
How much battery you?
Okay, here we
In
go.
a second, his battery's about to go out.
Whose batteries?
Well, her battery.
Okay.
Because that's where we record a little bit. We'll
We'll wrap up soon? Okay,
but
cool.
Real quick, before that happens, are you guys around tomorrow too?
No, I leave tomorrow.
You leave tomorrow?
But I wanted you to exegete that text when it says the nation shall see it, they shall lick with dust like a serpent. What does that mean?
Oh, the answer is the question about who's in this flock. Because that's the imagery in Micah, right?
Right.
And so I'm giving an answer from the New Covenant to explain who's in the flock.
Okay.
So
what I'm saying, that's the people outside the flock,
these
right?
are God's enemies. These are God's enemies, which is Jew and Gentile alike.
Okay, so
Jew and Gentile alike.
this is the nations.
By sheer number of them. Well, the question is, what does that really mean, right? Because you have every nation, tribe, tongue over here. So in the Old Covenant, what's a way you describe God's enemies? It's the other nations.
Exactly.
Like you generally wouldn't say like Israelites unless you're being specific about what Israelites are talking about. As a simple, almost like an equivalency in the Old Covenant to have someone understand God's enemies, because these people war against Israel, they attack Israel, they put Israel in bondage, they try to tempt Israel with prostitution and idolatry and everything else, right?
Right.
This is shorthand for say the enemies of Yahweh.
Exactly.
Who are the enemies of Yahweh in the New Covenant? Well, we see the answer. If you are not in my flock, right?
I agree, but that's why it's so important to keep reading, because when you read verse 20, it tells you who he's talking to, thy people, and then it basically explains who the other nations are. It says, and thou wilt perform the truth to Jacob and the mercy to Abraham, which thou hast sworn unto our fathers from the days of old. So the people we speaking about in verse 14 is his people. Israel, it says right here. So the other nations is literally the other nations outside of Israel, like you said in the Bible, the enemies of who you call Yahweh were the other nations. So who are these people that are going to be licking the dust, be like worms, and things of that nature?
Those are Yahweh's enemies.
Which would, by your own admission, be the other nations. outside of Israel.
Right, these are God's enemies. So saying
Right,
other nations
exactly.
here is shorthand for God's enemies. God's enemies, as we discussed, continuing with the shepherd king motif, are those who are not under the flock of the shepherd. But there's a perfect example for this, because if we have this idea of this is other nations always means those who cannot obtain God's mercy no matter what they do, then we really haven't answered questions, not just here, but there's other places in Isaiah 19 where we have nations spoken of in a way that would contradict, I think, your reading you just gave. Because we have Egypt and Assyria, these are other nations, who are described as the work of my hands and my people.
Now, why would it say Egypt and Assyria? What do those two places have in common?
What do Egypt and Assyria have in common? Well, here, that they'll be God's people and the work of his hands.
But why would it say just Egypt and Assyria?
Well, if you're going to say something along the lines of that's where they're in captivity, then you would have to ask yourself, why not Babylon? Because Babylon's not mentioned here.
No, exactly.
So that can't be the answer.
No, well, why would it just single out Egypt and Assyria?
Oh, well, I think there's a few things you could say about this. One way to look at it, a lot of people looked at this, it's sort of almost like first fruits or examples of key Gentile nations. So it's almost shorthand for Gentile nation. That's one way to look at it. Other people see a more literal fulfillment, where if you look in the Middle East and if you look at the spread of Christianity, right? You look and sort of some of the places where the gospel was first accepted in whole, ironically, but I don't think it's ironically, it was prophetically fulfilled, is among the Egyptian people and the Assyrian people. And before the Islamic invasion in North Africa, Egypt was called a Christian nation. That's what it's described. And you can see that even in the Islamic sources. The Arabs came in and conquered native northern Africans who would describe themselves as a Christian people in essence. Now we know that to mean everybody's either Christian. Similar with Assyria, who now doesn't even have a country of their own. But if you meet a Syrian today, it doesn't mean they're necessarily walking with the Lord or whatever. They would generally describe themselves as a Christian. We have examples of great Assyrian Christians throughout the day. Shout out to Sam Shamoun, the Assyrian Encyclopedia, for example.
Right. So I would, like I said, contend that the reason why it says Israel and Egypt and Assyria, because those are places of captivity. But
what about Babylon, though? I hear you, but what about Babylon?
Well, just chose to mention Israel, Egypt and Assyria, just those two, because they were captivities of Israel. But I want to go back to the slavery
they were
motif.
captivities in Babylon, right?
But it's not going to list every captivity, because when you read the book of Judges, for example, we went into captivity under various nations, all nations. So it's just listing those two as the principal nation that we're in slavery under. So it's not going to name every nation.
You see how you're reading that in there, though.
You kind of read in the places where the Israel or the gospel is first, but you kind of read that
I'm
in
saying
there
that
too.
could be a prophetic fulfillment. Just leaving that aside, it does say Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands. Like it does say that. That's not reading anything. It's saying, and it's actually the place, because it says there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria, and Assyria will come into Egypt. So these are actually the places in Egypt into Assyria, and the Egyptians will worship with the Assyrians. Now, I don't see how you can look at that and say this actually just means all Israelites, because what it does is it destroys language. That means you can say Egyptian and have it be in reference to the land, and say Assyria and even mention their land as part of it, and have no clues. And in fact, you have clue against your interpretation, because then it says Israel, but you're saying it's all Israel, but then it has Israel mentioned, so it's clearly a third distinct entity. Right.
So we agreed prior. That's why I went to Isaiah that Israel was called Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Israel can be called other nations.
So,
yes or no?
So what's going on there? Spiritual Sodom, right? That's in Revelation.
Okay.
So we understand that concept. We understand that concept.
Okay.
It's just saying, hey, this is how you're acting.
Okay.
But we don't see a context like that. Like, why would you call faithful Israelites by the name of a dirty Gentile nation?
That's why I would say it's just those are two places that Israelites were in captivity. That's we can contend that. But I want to go back to the slavery motif, because you mentioned something earlier, how you won't be having slaves in the kingdom of heaven. This is talking about people being subject to Christ, right?
Ultimately.
Okay, so then you would be by then admitting that Isaiah 61:5, and strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the alien shall be your plowman and a vine dresser. What's a plowman and a vine dresser?
Somebody who takes care of
someone who works in the field.
Fields, yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that there's going to be people that are going to be slaves in the field under Christ's kingdom.
No, I don't think that's the same.
Okay,
at all.
so why is it saying plowman and vine dressers?
All of this language implies the same thing. All these
so it won't be actual plowman and vine dressers?
No, all these things imply the same exact thing.
Can I get a yes or no on that, Vocab?
Yeah, it does not mean you're actually going to have people of other nations working for you out.
So it doesn't. So when it says that the strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of aliens shall be your plowmen, it doesn't mean that the sons of strangers shall be your plowmen. It doesn't actually mean that.
No, and all we do...
Now here's vocab real quick. Throughout this dialogue, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is a very important point.
Right.
Earlier, when you mentioned the Gentiles, you said, well, so you're saying when it says Gentiles, it doesn't mean Gentiles. Well, you're saying when it says plowmen and vine dressers, it doesn't mean actual plowmen and vine dressers. So the same game that you attempted to play with me earlier, I can do the same thing with you.
All right, so you're saying that you're going to have a field. Well, do you believe that all Israelites will have a field?
I believe that all Israelites will have slaves, well, if they choose to, in the kingdom of heaven. I believe that all nations will be in captivity under the children of Israel.
So will all Israelites have vine dressers?
Yes.
Okay. And all Israelites will have plowmen?
Yes.
So then everyone has to have a field. And has to grow grapes.
Sure, I guess you could say that. They'll be when it's talking the language that it's using. You'll have slaves in the kingdom of heaven.
Right, and you'll have peace despite the fact that they can sin against you.
Yes.
And despite the fact that you can kill them, that's still peace.
Yes.
And you would call it the kingdom, even though within the kingdom you still have rebels. And these
the rebels will be purged out prior to that amongst our people. When you say rebels, you're talking about
I'm talking about who you think are Gentiles who still sin.
Well, I'll show you
whose sins are still atoned for, which is extremely bizarre to me that you've got Gentile sins being atoned for.
Well, let me show you a perfect.
And if they're atoned for, why aren't they in good standing with Yahweh?
Hold on. Well, let me show you. Watch this, right? Zechariah chapter 14. In terms of the rebels, right? Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 16. It shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts. So I want to address that too, because we agree that all nations will serve God in the kingdom of heaven. Yeah. They'll be forced to serve God in the kingdom of heaven.
No.
Well, wait, vocab. I'm going to read. Can I please?
We agree.
You got it. Okay, fine. You don't agree to that. I'm going to keep going.
Just making that clear.
Okay, fine. That's fine. And to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. So he said there's going to be people that they won't come do that. They'll be rebellious. Unless what's going to happen to those rebellious people. And this is in the kingdom of heaven, vocab. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, they won't have any rain, there shall be the plague, wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So even in the kingdom, you will have people getting smitten. Now, with people being smitten, would you say that's peace?
Oh, I don't agree with that's what any of that means. That's just ultimately the judgment of God's enemies. But
so he's going to be judging people in the kingdom.
The fact that you think there's going to be slaughtering and death in the kingdom of heaven just shows how carnal the religion is. Like, it's a real carnal way to think that's what's going to be happening. It's almost like everything on earth that ever was that is bad, under your understanding of the kingdom, still is there. It's just the tables are turned. That means everything there is still bad. It's not really. It's not really any kind of improvement.
Everything is going to be in accordance with what the law dictates. Like, for example, chattel slavery during the transatlantic slave trade, there was raping of women, there was adultery, things of that nature. Those are things that will not happen in the kingdom of heaven.
Why can't a Gentile commit adultery?
One second, vocab. Under the, as you define it as the old covenant, did Israelites have the ability, and were they allowed by God to enslave other nations?
Oh, you had Israelite and Gentile slaves.
Were Israelites allowed to enslave other nations?
Oh, yeah.
Were they allowed to enslave each other?
Well, it depends. You had servants, but they could not become permanent. They could not become permanent. They could not become permanent servants. I recognize the difference.
Could you rule over them with rigor? As it says, like...
Yeah, there was definitely a difference.
Okay, so there was a favoritism there.
There was definitely a difference. God is doing something different with the Israelites in the Old Testament.
Is there a favoritism that you see right there?
I don't know if you would call it favoritism.
Really? So if I said,
you can call that if you want, sure.
Okay, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. If I said, I can treat you great, I can't do anything bad to you, but to him, I can rule. He could be my slave, but you gotta be like my butler. That's clearly showing separation and favoritism. So God, the point of me bringing that up is that's always been in his prerogative to do that. So you disagreeing with what I'm saying in terms of what's going to be happening in the kingdom of heaven.
If you knock out, you know what I'm saying, your slave's tooth in the old covenant, what happens to it?
You have to, you have to let him go for his tooth's sake.
Right. So you punch out your Edomite slave during your 1,000 years when they're around, knock his tooth out, right? What happens?
Well, Edom's going to be destroyed, so that's not relevant.
During the 1,000 years, you still have Edomite slaves, under your understanding. So Mike Tyson has Edomite slaves. He punches one, knocks out his teeth, right? What happens to that Edomite slave?
I'll cross that bridge when we
what that shows is your application of the law, because you're just talking about we don't have this law and you can't do. It shows you're not really going to apply it adequately and really evenly. Because I knew you couldn't say that Edomite's going to go free. So it shows you don't really believe what you're saying. You see
Well,
what
no,
I'm
I
saying?
do believe what I'm saying, but here's the point, though. You're trying to go there to negate what is biblically prophesied is going to happen to the children of Esau. It says that they're going to. Do you agree that the children of Esau are going to be slaves?
The children of Esau are going to be slaves? No, of course not.
Why not?
Where's the prophecy of
Amos
that?
9 and 12.
Where's the
They
children?
may possess the remnant of Edom.
Wait, that doesn't actually say they're going to be slaves. So
what
you
is-
take, it says you take.
Right.
That can be interpreted a few ways, but one thing you say you take their land.
Okay, perfect. I can show you how it's not. The Hebrew word there for possess is yarash. You're not gonna. Yarash means to afflict, to literally impoverish.
Yeah. So you think you're going to have Edomite slaves for 1,000 years?
Yes.
Okay, what rules will govern how you treat them?
The laws of the Bible.
Okay, so if you punch out one of their teeth, what happens?
I would say that would be non-applicable to them in the kingdom of heaven
Where did you get that from, bro?
because they're going to be dealt with in the way that they did to us.
So
more than double that they did
where is
unto
the
you.
exception? Where is the exception that says something like what you just said?
Amos the 9th chapter.
So the rules for Edomite slaves alone don't apply. Okay, a Moabite slave, you punch out his tooth. Right, let's say you have,
I would take
let's
a
say
look
you
at
have,
that. I'll
you have
take a
Bruce
look at
Lee
that.
reincarnated in the kingdom, and let's say we disagree with Tahar that Bruce Lee is not a Jake, right? And someone punches out Bruce Lee's reincarnated guy, right? Whoever that is, right? They punch out his tooth, knock it out. Can he go free?
I'll take a look at that.
Okay, so then
take a look. That's. I'm not saying I'm not going to give an answer that is definitive when I don't have a definitive answer. So I'll say I'll take a look at that.
But see, you see how that seems like when you said they'll be governed by the laws of the Torah, basically is what you seem to say. It seems like you're not really sure how they'll be governed according to the laws of the Torah.
No, I'm saying that I want to give a definitive answer. Of course, it's going to be in accordance with the laws of God, but I'm saying I want to give a definitive answer.
Do you think those Edomite slaves you could abhor them or hate them?
Abhor them?
Can you abhor
Well,
them?
the word
Can you detest your Edomite slaves?
Well, the word abhor means to do abominable in that context. Number one, Deuteronomy 23:7, the word there for Edomite is Syrian. It's supposed to be Syrian, not Assyrian. So,
Wait,
can I hate an Edomite? Yes.
The word for Edomite
It's
is
a clerical error. It's a
23:7.
clerical error for Syrian.
What is
So-
your textual evidence for this?
Okay, you go to the Hebrew word for Edomite right there, number one, and you go back to Nahor and the Syrians and how we had brotherly dealings with them.
Do you have one example of where that's translated as an Assyrian?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if that's the case, is an Assyrian your brother?
Yes.
Okay, so Assyrians are your brother. Will you put them in slavery?
Yes.
So you can enslave your brother.
Yes, them, because you can't enslave another Israelite, though. The same way that you can't enslave.
So non-Israelites are your brother.
That's why you got to look at the context of it. Leviticus speaks about ruling over them with rigor. You can rule over another nation with rigor, despite the fact that you're their brother.
Okay.
In that context.
So you can rule over your brother, the Assyrian, because you're saying that's what Deuteronomy 23:7 really means. And you're saying that you can rule over them.
In that context, they're called brother, yes.
And so you can't hate Assyrians.
No, the word abhor means to do abominable. I can't do anything like, okay,
So you think it's abominable to put someone in slavery?
no.
Okay, so
This is
then,
according with the laws of God.
then
I can't have sex
if
with their
it's not
wife.
abominable to be in slavery, then what was so bad about slavery?
About our slavery?
About anyone's slavery.
No, it's not anything. Anyone's slavery that's none of my concern. The problem with us is, matter of fact, let me just get the scripture.
So like the Assyrians, some of them were enslaved by the Ottoman Turks.
Let me just read
Was
this.
that abominable for
Hold on.
the Assyrians to be enslaved by the Ottoman Turks?
I'm not concerned with the Assyrians.
But you
and
gotta
the
answer the
Ottoman
question to
Turks.
be consistent, because you're saying all I'm doing is following.
They could have been doing abominably to them, but I'm saying we can't do abominably to anybody else. We have to do things that are in accordance with the laws of God, and they have to do the same thing with us.
Okay.
They did it. That's why they'll be punished. Zechariah 1
You can be
verse.
abominable to other slaves, but can you be abominable towards
One
Edomites then?
second. Zechariah chapter 1. What do I want? Okay, Zechariah chapter 1 Zechariah chapter 2 verse 8. It says, after the glory hath he sent me unto the nations which spoiled you, for he that toucheth you toucheth the apple of his eye. Israel is the apple of God's eyes. For behold, I will shake mine hand upon them, and they shall be a spoil to their servants, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts shall send you. They're going to be servants because they touched the apple of God's eye. When you read earlier in Zechariah, it says, I was yet a little mad with them, and they held forth the affliction. Verse 15. And I'm very sore displeased with the heathen. Why? that are at ease, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. God was a little angry with the Israelites. He smote them in his, not in his wrath, but to give them a form of chastisement, and they took it too far. So that chattel slavery that they inflicted upon us, that is abominable, and that's not a point with the laws of God.
So slavery is not wicked. It just depends who is enslaving who.
Yes.
Okay. So then, the only problem with white folks enslaving whoever they enslaved is the wrong group enslaving the wrong group.
Yes.
All right. So what about when you had, what if you have Hamites enslaving other Hamites? That's irrelevant?
It's irrelevant.
All right. You see how upon those kind of distinctions that you make, it makes morality no longer objective? Well, because you have a morality that is literally situational to the point where it's strictly conditional based upon someone's ethnicity.
Okay.
So you're saying some things are right based upon ethnicity, some things are wrong strictly based upon ethnicity. So the category for what's right and wrong is not actually God's holiness upon this understanding of morality. It's actually your ethnicity.
Well, no, actually, no, here's what I'm saying. Could it be, is it wrong for them to do that? It could be wrong, yes, but is it a sin? Is it something that God is concerned with? Not really, because he's concerned with his people. So when they enslave us, that's what makes him mad. Them enslaving, doing abominable to each other, we're going to put that to an end in the kingdom of heaven.
God is concerned with sin, isn't he?
Of course.
Right. So he's concerned with sin when you are having, your Edomite and Moabite slaves, whoever. Could the Moabite slaves somehow have some kind of underground network where they enslave the Ishmaelite slaves?
I have no idea.
Would that be sin to you? Is that one of the sins that we atone for?
I have no idea.
But you see how
that's not relevant to the point.
It is, because it matters how you define sin.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically have taken the attitude of white supremacists, which says this would be wrong for us to do to this group, but since we're doing it to this group, it's actually not that wrong because of who they are. So you actually are saying white supremacists were right about ethnicity being the determining factor for certain moral actions. You're just saying they had the wrong group. So here's what I would say to you guys. You guys should check out some of the writings of the pro-slavers who wrote apologetics for the South. And you should find out what were their arguments they used and use them yourself. Because do you see what I'm saying?
No, I understand. And here's what I want to say. And this is why it's kind of disingenuous. Because when you read the scripture, you agreed earlier that, for example, I'm not allowed to rule over an Israelite with rigor, right? Leviticus 25:44. Let me just read. Right?
Yeah, the old covenant.
Hold on.
Under the old covenant.
Does God
you said
change?
it doesn't matter about you. Was an Israelite back then?
Does God change?
The covenant's changed.
Hold on. Does God change?
The covenant.
Does God change?
God does not change. The covenant.
Okay, does his morality change?
You don't see how that question is exactly what I'm asking you?
No, exactly. So
that's
can you answer
the
that
exact question I'm asking.
Can you answer that question?
Yeah, that's my point to you.
Yes, I need to know yes or no. So
God's morality is fixed and objective, right?
So does it change?
No, God's morality.
Okay, so real quick, here's the point.
Holiness is
please let me read this, right?
The covenants do change.
Okay, that's fine. So watch this. His morality doesn't change. So what's wrong is wrong, right?
Yes. So slavery is wrong.
Perfect. Leviticus 25:44. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, your slaves, that's what a bondman or a bondwoman is, which thou shalt have, which you can have, shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall you buy bondmen and bondmaids. So you can purchase other human beings. They can be your slaves. Moreover, of the children of children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall you buy. You can buy of the other nations and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, and they shall be your possession. You can own these other human beings, and you shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondmen forever. These can be your slaves. So if God's morality doesn't change, it's okay for these people for you to enslave these people. Hold on. But over your brethren, the children of Israel, ye shall not rule one over another with rigor. So when you mentioned prior to me saying this just now, are you saying that these people, it's okay to enslave those people, but not these people? Well, according to God, it is.
Yeah, the hardness of your heart is why Moses.
So according to that, what I just read, right? Yeah. It's okay to enslave a certain people, but not another people. Yes or no?
So the hardness of your heart is the answer.
Yes or no?
No, that's the answer.
Yes or no?
Don't.
Please, okay. It's yes
I'm
or no?
cool. I'm cool on this because I've explained this. And
It doesn't have to get like a yelling thing, but like.
No, that's fine because I already explained this.
Okay.
Just like with the divorce laws, you have Jesus saying, "For the hardness of the heart is why you have these laws." Same thing with slavery.
Can you demonstrate that?
Yeah. All you got to do is go back to the garden. and find out the original intention of what God was, right?
Right.
And it's that the vice regency that Adam and Eve were given was over the created order,
Right.
over animals and creation,
So-
not over other humans. And even the curse demonstrates it, where it says, "By the sweat of your brow you work for your bread."
Right.
So not by the sweat of another man's brow you get your bread.
Okay.
So the whole thing is messed up. And so what's happening is, just like with polygamy and laws about what you do in warfare, they're conditions for a fallen world. But the sadness of the carnal Israelite religion that you hold to is it says, this is what we have for all eternity. That's what I'm saying. Okay. It's not that God's morality changed. If you're going to do that, I do the same thing with you. I can say, let's change, let's change, let's change. And when it comes to divorce, did Jesus give identical ruling as Moses? No, he did not. He said, this is given for the hardness of
That's
your
a
heart.
perfect example.
So that's all we got.
So that's what I'm saying.
But like I said, man, it's been about 3 hours.
I'm
bro.
saying, but just
It's been almost 3 hours.
20 seconds, literally. We clearly see Christ saying, for the hardness of your heart, he gave that law, right? But where do we see it outlined for the hardness of your heart? That's why he let you have slavery. You are drawing that conclusion. And that's why I said,
Well, I just gave you the example from Genesis.
But it doesn't
It's
say
not
that.
you.
You're
It's
drawing that
not you.
conclusion based upon your own
Yes.
presupposition. Now, here's the thing, right? You will be so vehemently against Israelites for so-called drawing conclusions, or back to the Greek thing right there. Or so you're saying when it says Greek, it doesn't mean Greek, it means Greek-speaking Jew? But then you earlier admitted that when it says plowman and vine dresser, it doesn't mean plowman and vine dresser. So the same.
No, those are really plowmen and vine dressers. But that, what you're saying,
but you
is
earlier
not,
said it's
is-
not.
You know,
So the same
No, I'm
things that you
saying
come up against us
that's-
for, you employ in your very arguments, Vocab. That's what I'm saying.
that's not what happened.
I mean, okay, the footage
I'm
is
not
so
saying
otherwise.
I'm not saying that plowman doesn't mean plowman. What I'm saying is that is not saying these are the conditions for the eternal kingdom.
Right. So when it says
That's
the
what I'm
stranger shall be your plowman, it doesn't mean the stranger are going to
Yeah,
be
that's
your
not
plowman.
describing the conditions of the eternal kingdom.
So you see how like you laugh at us and make mockery of us for saying stuff that we can clearly draw from the scriptures, but then when I ask you the same type of questions, when it says plowman, well, I know it says that, but it doesn't really mean that.
That's not what it says.
I mean, that is what you essentially said, because if that's not the case, then will there be plowmen and vine dressers in the kingdom?
Slaves? No, but
But
you
it
wanna
says
plow-
there's
you
going to
wanna
be
plow a
plowmen
field?
and vine dressers.
Sure, if you want to plow a field,
That's what it says, Vocab. So now, in future dealings with Israelites, when it says Greek and he's Greek-speaking Jew, and you say, well, it doesn't say that, well, then there's stuff that you believe that it says that you believe is not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the question is, you're saying that is attendant or relevant to the eternal kingdom. That's the question.
Whether or not that's the case, it says that though.
Yeah, but that could be, if you want to go there, you could have that being some state before earth. It doesn't mean it's related to the eternal kingdom. And all you got to do is go to Revelation and see. You don't see what you're trying to have in there. You have all the wicked are cast out. So you have the wicked living under your own roof, don't you?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
So what
we
is
got to
it?
put the book together. We don't just stay in one
Last thing,
place.
because I know
right?
because I thank you for your time, but this is the last thing, right? Because you say you don't see that. Revelation 2 and 26 to 27. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received my Father. So we do see that. Those are overcome.
Outside of the dogs and the sorcerers and the sexually immoral, murderers and idolaters,
So can you
and
explain
everyone who
that,
loves
please?
and practices falsehood. Yeah, the answer is Revelation 22:15.
So what is Revelation 2 and what is it? What I just read?
That same thing. That's a submission motif. That's the same exact thing.
So now we reach another place where it says that you'll be given power over the nations and you're going to break them in pieces. They're not going to be given power.
That's not talking to Israelites.
Hold on.
It doesn't say the Israelites going to break the nations in pieces.
Let's say
Jesus
that's
Christ.
true. Hold on. Wait a minute. It says to he that overcometh. This is Christ speaking to those that overcome. He's not talking about himself.
Where does it say that Israel is going to be the one who breaks the nation?
Hold on. Okay. Well, where does it say that Israel's going to be the one that breaks the
No, I'm
nations?
saying in Revelation where we were.
Okay, hold on. Let's just say, for argument's sake, it doesn't say that. It says whoever, Gentile, whatever, they get saved. In the kingdom, those that overcome will be given power over peoples and be able to break them in pieces. Or is this another place where Vocab, it says that, but it doesn't really mean that?
All this means is when Christ comes back. This is about, part of this is about Christ coming back and judging. I don't understand what the...
So who are those that overcome? What does that mean? To he that overcometh.
Who overcomes? Okay,
Yeah.
where are we at?
To he that overcometh. Revelation 2, and I want to say that was like 22. And this can't be talking about Christ himself, because he's the one speaking to those that overcome.
Revelation 2 where?
Let me see. It's later, a little bit later. So it'll be on the other page. 2 and... Okay, start at like 20, right there, that one right there.
Yeah, the one who comes to you, so you authority over the nations. Even as I myself here, and I would give him the morning star. Yeah, the church rules with Christ. That's all it's saying.
So they're going to be breaking people into shivers?
No, this is the end times judgment. This isn't some eternal state where you see. I don't. If you're saying this is the eternal kingdom, then I don't see how you're saying this is peace.
Okay, so to
You're
those that
saying this is
overcome
a
it,
permanent thing, right?
so those that overcome it, what are they overcome?
Yeah, they'll be victorious over the devil, over the beast, over the Antichrist.
So this is when
over
they're
all
saved,
that.
right?
This is when the Lord comes back.
Okay, and then they're
that's
saved.
when his people are vindicated. No, they're already saved.
Okay, when Christ comes back, people will be breaking people into shivers.
This is the way to describe rulership and disassociation.
You see what I'm saying? Like honestly, vocab. I know you disagree and stuff, but it literally says that, and you're taking it saying what does it actually mean?
Well, then, I mean, are you saying you interpret everything in the Bible literally?
Literal when it's literal, metaphorical when it's metaphorical,
Right.
metaphysical when it's metaphysical. But then you have to read in context and understand by rightly dividing the word of truth when it's physical, when it's spiritual, etc. And I feel like that's what you get wrong.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, we see this is the church.
I mean, okay.
Well, cool, man. I'm gonna take off. It's been a good bill. It's been a hot minute.